You have to really look at the bigger picture in life, and sometimes the simplest question can bring the most complex answer. Welcome to No Crime, No Time. I'm Danny, also known as RD, and this is your Blackout. When Stephen Avery was arrested in 1985, he served 18 years in prison, wrongfully convicted for a sexual assault, attempted murder that he had no part of. 9 years of that time, the county knew that indeed he was innocent, or at least that he needed a review because someone else had admitted to the crime. The DA, Dennis Vogel, at the time of the trial, had already dealt with the person that had committed the crime. He had already went through knowing who Gregory Allen was. Why was he not investigated? They couldn't account for him at the time of the attack. The police were responding according to dispatchers to a more pertinent event. Interesting enough, Dave Bogata was there on the beach, states that there were police everywhere on the beach. So this was before Penny was attacked, Miss Bernstein, before the attempted murder in broad daylight, with cops roaming all over. That just seems so strange that Gregory Allen would have showed up right where all the cops already were. And then you have Penny Bernstein's husband stating that she'd been gone about 15 minutes on a jog, on a run up the beach, and he was ready to call the police department. But did he really need to, because weren't they already there? I just feel this stems even deeper into back when Stephen pulled the gun on Sandra Morris, who was affiliated directly with her husband on the police force. It created a target on his back, if you will, in my opinion. And it just never left his back. And it appears to have built up to an intense level that went all the way up to Janet Reno, our Attorney General for the United States during the Clinton administration. Because what ended up happening was during 2003, when Stephen was finally released from that wrongful conviction, and the Innocence Project took it over and found that letter or that note with Gregory Allen's name in Stephen Avery's file, depositions were held. We know this. Dennis Vogel and Tom Kocourek, the DA and the sheriff, were the last two that had to go through the deposition, and it was called off. Now think about it. Kocourek was the arresting officer in 1985, the sheriff at the time. Think of how he targeted Stephen and didn't allow him to have any phone calls whatsoever or make any phone calls, no contact with the outside world for an extensive amount of days back in 1985. That's crossing a personal line, because you have to really pay attention to why would Kocourek himself be after an Avery? Well, Arland Avery, Steve's uncle, had already set the tone for that when Wanish and Kocourek ran against each other for sheriff. Kocourek, being a used car salesman trying to get his footing, kept going for the sheriff position. And it kept getting knocked back, not getting the position. So a gentleman named Wanish ran against him. And Arlen Avery supported Wanish. And it caused discord within when Kocourek did win. He had taken note who stood by him loyally and who did not. And Arlen Avery had made it clear that he was wanting Waynish as sheriff. So he was demoted, I believe, to jailsman, bondsman, something like that. Bailiff, whatever. So Kocourek already had a bad taste in his mouth if you really look at the situation with Arlen Avery. Did he hold a grudge against the Averys from then on? Think about how all of these counties in that area have so many family members working in the force. They're either cousins or brothers or sisters or something. I mean, you can't deny that Robert Herman, and Todd Herman were brothers working as a sheriff, and I can't remember Todd Herman's position, but it was high up. So with nepotism running so thickly, which is where you don't go off someone's merits and their ability, but you hire them or you favor them, I should say, because of who they are and how they're related to you. That seems to be the flavor of the Manitowoc soup these days, and has been for a long, long time. I get that straight from the locals. It's not hearsay, it is. So there's deep family roots that go through these communities. And then you have the French and German relationship to top that off. So when you look at Avery's situation, Stephen then, he robs a bar, something about a roll of quarters and throwing popcorn and potato chips all over. And then he begins, more or less, in my opinion, being targeted by Sandra Morris, his cousin. And there's that bloodline. She wanted to make up in the police force her disdain for him or something, so that they clearly knew where she stood, possibly. Whatever her reason was, she continued to badmouth him, misrepresent him in many, many ways. When Stephen had enough, he acted abruptly, ill-mannered, and dangerous, and he endangered her life, according to the records. Had her stop in the middle of the road and pulled a gun on her. That's where he got his gun charge. So 6 years of the 18 years would have been served either way. So we have 12 years of wrongful conviction. But you have to look at Kocourek and go, okay, well, where does he tie into this now, where this individual is allegedly murdered by Stephen? She is missing. I will give you that. I don't believe she's dead. I believe Carmen Boutwell's bones were used in all of Carmen Boutwell's cremains, as well as her pap smear, which I think is the DNA card, her cherry Pepsi, which she had in her hand. And I believe that's her blood that they drew at the time before her autopsy. I believe that's all been placed in this case in place of Teresa Halbach. And someday we can get into why I believe all that. But really look at the Kocourek connection. And who is the cousin to Kocourek? David Remiker, Detective Remiker. Now, why is that important? Well, the boss, he was Remiker's boss at hire date. Or I'm sorry, yes. Kocourek hired Remiker. So when they say the boss has something he wants us to do, who's really pulling the strings back there? Sure, Peterson at the time as sheriff, going to about to hand the torch over to Robert Herman as sheriff. Just about to. Isn't it interesting how all those affiliated with the 1985 case all either handed over or die mysteriously and just are off the case, except for the crime lab, Sherry Culhane. She's just there all the way through to the dire end, right? She dedicates her career every time Stephen Avery's name comes up to assuring that she is the sole handler of his evidence and that she is a lead on that, even though she wrongfully convicted him in the first case. So, if David Remiker is indeed just allegedly working off a nepotism flavor of soup, the Manitowoc soup. How far will he go to protect his uncle Kocourek from a $36 million lawsuit? And what does it ensure in his own lineage if he successfully sinks this $36 million lawsuit? Does it provide enough motive to be the lead detective in both Carmen Boutwell and Teresa Halbach's case and actually be the one that plants all the evidence for other authorities to find? Is it possible? That's all I'm asking you to think about. Just think about, is it possible that he was worried about Uncle Tom? Because Kocourek, he definitely was targeting Stephen. Absolutely. And so was the next sheriff. Because Stephen was a threat not only to the community in the sense of, I say community, I mean the police department, not the community. He was safe. But he was a threat to the nepotism where they had done favors for each other. I mean, really, what other investigations brought light to how many secrets that police community, the law enforcement community of the county held? Ricky Hochstetler case is where we're headed next. And we're going to look and see who played what role there. At least I give you some food for thought for this week, and I love you to the moon and back.